Gen Z Deep Dive, where we discuss Gen Z and its fractured relationship with Donald Trump. Last week, Donald Trump claimed that he received leaked information that he would be arrested on Tuesday, March 21st. So we wanted to take a look back and bring ourselves forward of the relationship between Donald Trump and Gen Z. So Gen Z could potentially doom Trumpism and conservatism as we know it here in the United States. This generation of voters is more likely to support government solutions to issues such as climate change, racism, and economic inequality. They also tend to care more about systemic racism and an equitable future than upholding traditional nuclear family structures. As of 2020, while Gen Z remains a small part of the electorate, at present at least, as more members of this generation reach voting age, they could force a different kind of conservatism to take root as Republicans compete for their votes. This generation's belief in diversity, equality, and social justice are likely to guide them for decades, pushing the Republican Party to either embrace a more inclusive, possibly libertarian message built around social and economic freedoms, or lose with increasing regularity. Polling data from 2020 and interviews with experts suggest that a political realignment is already underway, and a realignment could be coming, or the opportunity exists for a seismic one driven by these young Gen Z voters. So, if Republicans do not shift their positions on climate change, racial injustice, and social tolerance, they could lose. We may see a parallel tilt towards Democrats as diversity defines a generation, and Generation Z is inclusive and intolerant of discrimination at similar, if not higher levels than millennials. So Gen Z has a growing interest in climate change, racial justice, LGBTQ rights, and while some Republicans have been evolving on climate change, the party remains divided on that issue, with many still denying its existence. The Black Lives Matter movement has gained significant support among Gen Z, and the movement has become increasingly diverse and multiracial. Similarly, Gen Z is more accepting of LGBTQ rights, with a majority supporting gender-neutral pronouns and greater options on forms and online profiles. However, Democrats cannot take Gen Z's support for granted and must work to appeal to a younger, more diverse voter bloc. So, many Gen Z Republicans viewed Trump's loss in the election as an opportunity for the party to move in a new direction while maintaining conservative values. They hoped that the Republican Party would become more tolerant and inclusive, focusing on core social issues like guns and abortion, and tone down rhetoric on racial injustice. Well, according to the exit polls that were taken back in 2021, Trump's support among voters aged 18 to 24 dropped from 37% in 2016 to 31% in 2020. And again, some young Republicans point back to the issues of LGBTQ rights, climate change, social inequity, and economic inequity as things that need to be addressed or changed by the Republican Party. And they also think that the Republican Party needs diverse and young perspectives to evolve and adapt to a changing nation. Although some young conservatives are frustrated with lawmakers distancing themselves from Trump, many agree that Trumpism will persist in some form. But they hope for new faces to lead the party, championing America First policies without turning people off like they perceived Trump did, does, and maybe will do. And after the second impeachment trial where Donald Trump was acquitted, generational political fault lines became reinforced, with millennials and Gen Z being the driving force behind the support for Trump's conviction. These younger generations have experienced significant public events like 9/11, the 2008 recession, and the polarization of America, and may now be looking to the Democratic Party to address their concerns and deliver on key policies such as student debt, immigration reform, voting rights, and gender and racial equity. And as we look at the Biden administration, it seems that many young voters are disillusioned with President Joe Biden and his administration. All we can say is that the stakes for how this generation looks at the political process are high, and they're already disillusioned. According to a Brookings article, recent data and election results among millennials and Gen Z, we look at the 2022 midterm elections and we see that young voters were able to shift the election where Republicans did not win the majority of seats in the House and the Senate, and Democrats were able to maintain the Senate but did not win the seats that they had hoped to win because of this younger voting bloc. Young voters in the United States have expressed their frustration and anger with the current political system, which they view as broken and out of touch. Elected officials are perceived as too old and unable to address pressing issues such as climate crisis, racial injustice, democratic norm breakdowns, gender inequity, and economic insecurity. This dissatisfaction is reflected in the low approval rating of President Joe Biden among 18 to 29-year-olds. To get young people more engaged in politics, we may need to consider things like civic education, national service programs, funding opportunities, all of these things. Because Gen Z perceives as well that mass shootings and the response to COVID-19 have thus far still been inadequate. If we look back at history, when younger Democrats were elected to Congress and helped pass critical legislation during their time has only marched forward to say that younger generations want more and more legislation that affects civil rights, economic justice, and social and cultural liberation. What we do know in our polarized America is that there must be a transformative moment in U.S. politics, where leaders listen and respond to the concerns of younger generations. The burden is not only on young people to stay engaged, but also on the political leaders to address the issues that matter to them and demonstrate that their engagement can make a difference in shaping the future of the country.